Today, it's the ultimate slushy machine showdown. 8 machines, yes, 8 machines, and only one will be victorious. Okay, so not really what's going to happen, but I do have 8 slushy machines, and I have tested them all, from the Ninja to the BKPPM to the Viva sister machines. I will share with you the results of extensive testing and let you know each machine's quirks and features. All of these are pretty good, and there is no ultimate or best slush machine. It really depends on what you need it to do. Well, I do have 8 machines total here. This newer Ninja model I did not pick up until after I did most of the testing here with the other 7 machines. I did, however, do a comparison video between the 2 Ninja machines that I have, which is the original version that I bought about a year ago, and then the new one that's exclusive to Costco. And I determined through looking at them, testing them, making cocktails and drinks in them, that they're basically the same, except the Costco version has a larger capacity tank, and they do exactly the same thing. So this one will be left out of today's testing. This video is not sponsored, but several of these machines were sent to me for free. One of these machines I was paid to create a sponsored video on, and another one of these machines I had agreed to work with the brand in a sponsored video, but then decided not to move forward after testing it. And I'll explain all of that to you later. There are chapter markers below to skip around and more details on each machine, price, capacity, and links to where you can pick these up. That'll all be in the episode's description. The results I'll share with you are pretty clear. They're as clear as they can be. And they have to do with how cold the machines get, how well they slush, and how easy or difficult they are to use. While I remove all of these from the bar because this just gives me anxiety, I'll tell you about each machine. First up, we have the Ninja. It's not the original home slush machine, but it's the original trendy, popular home slush machine, and it was just introduced in the summer of 2024. This is the Costco model, but in my testing today, I'll be doing the original version that I bought last year. The BKPPM, like many of the machines today, you might not be able to find this exact brand, but you will be able to find other models that look the same as this one, almost even identical. The Acaspresso, this is a different design than the other ones you're going to see today, but like the BKPPM, you should be able to find other brands that make something similar that looks almost identical. The Euhomy, I guess that's how you say it, this is the first of 3 machines that appear to be identical, yet they don't all perform the same. The Ecoviva, same shape, size, and look as the Euhomy. The Inoviva, it's the same as the last 2. These all have little tiny differences in the menus, but for the most part, the parts, the looks, and everything is identical. And finally, the HiCozy. This is different than all the other machines. The parts, the interface, and the way it functions is just different. And all those other machines have some similarities to the components of them, the evaporator, but this one just is different. All the parts in here seem to be different than the other ones. This is a good place to remind everyone that there is no universal rule as to what a slush or slushy is. If there is any ice at all, does that make it a slushy? Is it okay for there to be some melted liquid? And is it spelled like this or is it spelled like this? We will never know. I like to think of a slushy as having a visible slush. That's small ice crystals, plus it can pile on itself, something that once you dispense it, it does not go completely flat. There should be at least some structure to it, in my opinion. Now, these machines all say that they can do a slushy that is 16% ABV. That's alcohol by volume. And I started this process skeptical because I have never got close to that in the Ninja slushy. In a recent test, I got a little slush at 14% ABV, but usually I find that 10 to 11% is about as good as you can get the Ninja to do consistently. And it's consistency that's the problem with most home slushy machines. All these machines also say that they need 4 to 5%-ish sugar to work. And that's for 2 very important reasons. First, sugar helps a mix create smaller ice crystals. The sugar binds with the water to create those smaller and more pleasant to drink ice crystals, so you get better texture. But it also helps to ensure that the large chunks of ice don't form that could potentially damage the machine. Second, sugar lowers the freezing point. This is freezing point depression. Alcohol does this as well. However, sugar does not lower the freezing point nearly as much as you might think. For every 1 degree Brix, that's 1% sugar by weight, you'll lower the freezing point by about 0.1 degrees Fahrenheit. So in a 10 Brix or 10% sugar slushy, which I will often make, you lower the freezing point by only a single degree Fahrenheit. So sugar is a mandatory And yes, there are sugar alternatives that you can use like allulose, but not every sugar solution will work. Put in a diet soda, and if that runs in one of these machines, you better hope it has a safety feature to turn it off. Otherwise, you will probably break your machine. All of these machines work with non-alcoholic drinks. So a soda or a juice, you can just make yourself a slushie because these are all going to work because they're over 4 to 5% sugar. So if that's all that you care about, they all work. Consider the price, the brand, warranty, and shopping around because those are the biggest factors for you. But if you want to make cocktails, which is what I specialize in, then this is where the testing really matters because alcohol plays the biggest role in depressing the freezing point. And this can be complicated if you're trying to easily figure this out because the depression of the freezing point is non-linear, meaning each additional 1% alcohol lowers the freezing point by a larger amount than it did the previous 1% alcohol added. Water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. A 1% alcohol solution would freeze at 30.4 degrees Fahrenheit, and a 10% alcohol solution at 16.9 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I did do a lot of research on this, but I'm not a scientist. This might not be 100% accurate, but it is the year 2025 after all. Does anything matter? Apparently cold drinks matter. So let's get to our first test, which I just did for fun, and I'm not entirely sure how instructive it is, but I just put a cheap rum into the machine that's 40% ABV and I ran it. These machines cannot freeze or slush that because they would need to get down to negative 25 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. None get close. These machines seemingly all have some type of high alcohol shutoff where the machine can detect the high ABV and turn off, but they don't usually do that. So I ran these to see how cold they could get. I'll give you results as we go along for each test, but you will see that I'm not testing the same exact ones at the same exact time. And that's partly because as I was doing this test, I was on the other side of the bar and I kicked something and I looked down and there was a slushy machine there that I totally forgot about. But anyways, this is a 40% ABV test. The Ninja Slushie came in at 12 degrees Fahrenheit, the Acaspresso at 2 degrees, HiCozy at -5, and I think this would get colder if you let it run longer. Inoviva, 8 degrees, but later on it doesn't slush that well. We'll come back to that. Ecoviva, 8 degrees, Euhomy, 5, and the BKPPM is 17, but this machine seems to take forever, and I know that it can get colder. So how valuable is this? It's hard to say, but it does clearly show which machines are getting colder than others. The next test I did was the Pina Colada test, and this is pretty simple. I wanted to see how it would do with a commercial mix, something that you can buy that doesn't have a high ABV. So I tried the Margarita Man Pina Colada Select. I followed the instructions on the label, and it ended up at 6 to 7% alcohol by volume. All the machines did this with no problem. I was plenty happy with the texture that each one of these gave. Oh, and while I am kind of a stickler for fresh things, this tasted very good. And I used that super cheap rum in this as well, a handle of rum for $10, and this tasted pretty good. If you're interested in any of these pre-made Margarita Man mixes, there's a discount code in this episode's description and a conversion chart that I made on my website to scale down the recipes to work in these machines. Every one that I've had so far, I have enjoyed. Can you make something better than these? Probably. Can you make something as easy as it is to make these? No. So if every machine claims that it can do 16% alcohol by volume and requires at least 4% sugar, we should just test that. I made a gallon of rum, sugar, water, and green food coloring. This is exactly 16% ABV and 4 bricks and 4% sugar, but it's actually not exact. I wanted to help these machines. If 16% is the breaking point, I didn't want to be on that line. So it's 15.75% ABV. So the question is, will it slush? And before getting to that, a clarification on ABV or alcohol by volume. The ABV that I mentioned here is for the mix, for the liquid that we're putting in the machine, but what comes out of that machine will be different ABV. And no, I'm not really worried about evaporation, but I'm talking about overrun and freezing. As ice forms, the water expands. We've all left something in the freezer and had this problem. This means what comes out of the machine has more volume than what we put into the machine. These machines also have overrun, which is a term you might know if you're into ice cream making. It's how air gets incorporated into a drink or ice cream, increasing its volume. The best example that I could give you is a 7-Eleven Slurpee or an Icy. Those are very, very light, and they're that way because they're carbonated, which increases the volume significantly. While these are not carbonated, they can incorporate some air. None of this really matters too much, but what I'm trying to convey is that the ABV of the slushie that you're drinking is not exact, but the mix that you put in the machine is what I'm talking about. Or if you let your slushie completely melt, that would be the ABV of that slushie. So let's get to the 16% ABV test. The Ninja Slushie got a DNS, does not slush. The Acaspresso, again, does not slush. The HiCozy did, and it got down to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if the temperature matters here, but it did. The Inoviva did not slush. The Ecoviva, yes, and it was about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The Euhomy also worked, and it got to 7 degrees Fahrenheit. And the BKPPM, 17 degrees, man, it can get colder. I know if you give it more time, that machine will work. So in my testing, when it came to a 16% ABV, 4% sugar solution, the ones that did the best were these two, the Ecoviva and the HiCozy. And the Ecoviva did this a lot faster and quieter. But what was annoyingly surprising is that the Ecoviva appears to be identical to these other two machines, the Inoviva and the Euhomy, the sister machines. The Inoviva did not slush, not even close. It's just not getting very cold. The Euhomy did work well in this test. It just took a little bit longer than the Ecoviva, but it was close. And there were no significant variables or discrepancies in these testings. The temperature of the mix that was put in the machines was identical. The amount of time that they ran was identical. I even let those other ones run for longer. They just don't operate the same, even though they appear to be exactly the same, making me think that this is all software related, but I really don't know. And in the first test, the Euhomy got colder than the other two, so I just don't know why it didn't do it then and it did it earlier. All right, I have one more test to share with you. The final test that I did was making a cocktail from scratch. At the bare minimum, these machines should be able to make something that's 10% ABV and 10 bricks or 10% sugar. So I mixed together some tequila, sugar, lime juice, and water and made a batch to use across the machines. This isn't really a margarita, just a sour style cocktail. These three all did fine with a sour style cocktail drink at 10% ABV and 10% sugar. The 4 other machines all did just fine as well. Now is where things kind of come off the rails for my testing. I wanted to push them further in a real cocktail scenario, higher ABV, but also the higher sugar than the previous test, which was just 16% ABV and 4% sugar. These mixes also contain lime juice, so that will affect the freezing as well. How high could I get each one of these? So I thought I would increase the ABV by 1% in each machine. I added in more tequila, and they all did fine at 11%. While not perfect, they all pretty much did 12% ABV. But signs of slowing down were now showing. It was 13% where we see the first problem, and the first one to sort of bow out here was the Ninja Slushie, not being able to slush this 13% ABV mixture. And in this test, I was only adding alcohol, a 40% spirit, which is 40% alcohol and 60% water. So each round had less sugar and less acid than the round before it. The others did fine at 13% ABV. The BKPPM though, that was struggling, but it was trying its best. It never shut off. It just takes forever. At 14% ABV, we see some more machines bow out. The Acaspresso couldn't do it, the BKPPM couldn't do it, but the 3 similar machines and the HiCozy all could. 15% is where we max out. We have slush from the HiCozy, Ecoviva, and the Euhomy. The Inoviva does not get here, which we should have expected since it fell behind in the other 2 previous tests. So all of these machines work, and depending on what you need them to do, you can make the argument that any of them kind of work for what you need. When it comes to each machine, here's a little bit more about each one. The BKPPM was like the little slushy machine that could. It took a long time to do anything. It looks and feels the cheapest, including the lever here. But it's like it's always trying to compete against these other ones. If you can find it for $200 to $225 on a site like Temu, it might be worth it. Also, a big shout out to this one because it is the only one I've seen so far that has a removable back. So there's an extra gasket here, which could fail over time. But if you've had trouble cleaning a Ninja or any other machine because there's usually buildup right around here, this comes off. It's the only model that does that I have experienced so far. And I give it some points for that, but kind of no points for anything else. The Acaspresso was the biggest disappointment by far of them all. Initially, I really liked this. The look, the design, even the parts seemed different, and the machine could get colder than most. But it also didn't slush as well as the others in a sour cocktail mix, but that's actually not the biggest problem. Now, back at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I had refused to work with someone on a sponsored video, and it was this machine because it has a fatal flaw. All of these machines have a rear gasket, and it's this gasket that's used when you pull the tank back. That's what seals it, prevents it from leaking out everywhere. These gaskets are all thick and stationary, meaning they don't come off. The Acaspresso one is smaller and it comes off. It actually needs to come off each time for you to clean it. It's part of the design, so you can clean it. But that also means that you have to place this gasket back on behind the cooling barrel here, the evaporator, and you have to do it exactly, and you have to do it every time. Now I know, and I knew this, yet 2 times here I added mix to the machine and it leaked all of it. This is not a still shot of a leaking slushy mix, but some type of laminar flow. This is user error, and I know this. But on the second time this leaked, I went to great lengths to make sure that it was in the correct place. But you can't even see or feel underneath of here to make sure that that gasket is in the correct place. Even if this was my only machine and I was using it like every day, I still would never be confident that it's sealed. So if you have one of these or you want one of these, it will work, but you'd want to do a leak test each and every time before putting your mix in the machine. And that's just not something I'm willing to do or sign up for. Ecoviva, Euhomy, Inoviva, let's lump these all together. While these all look the same, and I think that they are the same, they did not perform exactly the same. The Ecoviva and the Euhomy were very similar, and the Inoviva, for whatever reason, just fell behind these. At the time of you watching this video, you might not be able to find any of these machines, and that goes for the other ones because none of these companies seem to make them. They buy them and they brand them and reskin them. So why are they different? I don't know. But these differences, I think, is to be expected basically of every machine out there today. One huge annoyance with 2 of these machines is the stupid menu. The Ninja lets you easily switch from slush to spike to rinse. You just press a button. These all have like a 3-second unlock feature, which I hate. I know it's just 3 seconds, but the interface was obviously designed by someone who hates people. The HiCozy gets the coldest, it slushes the highest ABV drink, and it runs different programs depending on what you put in the machine. And it's more than just a button and temperature setting. You can see it mixes things differently. It churns soft serve. It's not currently available, and it might not be available for several months. And the biggest downside here is the capacity. The fill line for a slushy is 41 ounces, but you could potentially add more. I haven't really tested that. The tank actually holds more than 41 ounces. Now, when you're shopping around for machines, keep in mind that the maximum amount of mix that you can add, or that they advertise you can add, is not the same as the max volume of the tank. Those numbers are different. So if you're comparing capacity, make sure that you're comparing the same thing against each other, fill or capacity. And finally, the Ninja Slushie, the OG. It's the worst one at making cocktails if you want anything at or above 10 to 12% ABV, consistently that is. To be honest, sometimes 6 to 7% ABV, it doesn't get as good as the other ones at like 12 to 14%. It does have a decent sized tank compared to some of the other ones. It's made by the most reputable brand, and my guess is that it has the best warranty. And while I love that these other machines have an interface that tells you more, including temperature, this is just easier to use with its simple buttons. I am not going to pick a winner, but I am going to give you 3 of my recommendations. The Ecoviva, if you're looking for a good sized tank and good cocktail slushing abilities. This specific one is better than the lookalikes, but I'm not that confident that the Ecoviva that you buy would be the same as this one, and that you don't end up with one that's more like the other ones. So who knows? So my advice would be to buy it from a place that allows returns. I would also recommend the HiCozy, and it's not available yet. And at the time of me sharing this video, which is like June or July of 2025, it might not come out for a few more months. There might be others out there that look the same, and there's a good chance that it's identical to this one, but I just don't know. I haven't seen or tested any of those. This is bigger in terms of size than the other ones, but it can do ice cream, and they really can't. The biggest downside is that it does not hold as much as the others. The max fill line here, once again, is 41 ounces, where the standard Ninja is 64. And just because it's a little smaller of a tank doesn't mean it's faster. Actually, in my experience, it actually takes a little bit longer to slush. Full disclosure here is that this machine was not only sent to me for free, but I did a sponsored video with HiCozy. I'll have a link to that video in this episode's description. But my relationship with them was just for that one video. Anything I include here today would not be like a part of a sponsorship. For this one, it's not even an affiliate type thing. So my recommendation is purely because it gets colder than the other ones, and it's not even like a close call for that. It just does get colder, and that's just a fact. And last but not least, drum roll please, my final recommendation. It's the one called the Ninja Slushie. I know, why am I recommending this one? The reason I'm recommending this is because I'm using the word recommend. Having the best brand behind that name means customer support. It means the best warranty. And like this one, if you can get it from Costco, you have a lifetime return policy. If you lose interest this summer in this machine, you can take it back. If you lose interest in this machine in the year 2030, you can take it back. And it's hard for me to recommend any of the other ones because they're brands that most of us have never really heard of, or we have very little experience with. But these all work well, and these are the two of those that I think work better than the others. And all of these things need to be considered. And we all know now that the Ninja does not get things as cold as the others, yet it's still good, and I think it's worthy of your consideration if you're shopping around for slushy machines. So that's it for this one. Testing out 7 slushy machines, well 8 if you count both Ninjas, and I'll have links to each of these machines if I can find them in this episode's description. Some of them might not even be available anymore. I think some of these brands get a lot of them, sell them like not a lot, but like a lot of them, and then they resell them, and once they're out, they're kind of gone forever. Some of these were sent to me, I don't know, last year, so it's been a good like 6 months or so for some of these. But I'll have links to those in the episode's description. If you're interested in more slushy content and slushy machine recipes, check out my second channel. It's MakeAndDrink Frozen, and that's where I do a lot of slushy content, slushy videos, including using mixes and making our own cocktails and talking more about the downfalls of each one of these slushy machines. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like below. Consider subscribing. If you want to support this channel more, check out my Patreon page. And otherwise, I will see you on the next one.